UIC Liberty TV. Change you can trust.
Okay, so you couldn't hear me. Hope you can hear me now. So once again, welcome and good night. Thank you so much for joining me on UIC Liberty TV. I'm Joseph Patterson, and we're going to be talking about the crisis in the Middle East, looking particularly on the the Israeli side, the Hamas side, where America fits into this, and in the context of Jamaica, because our interest is really Jamaica. But since our Prime Minister stepped into the subject matter, then we need to kind of talk about it a bit on this program as well. So let me welcome all of you who are on. Juliet Chambers, For the Truth, good night. Carl Spence, good to see you on. All of you are out there watching, thank you so much for joining us. Let's kick off this conversation by watching a quick clip concerning what the Prime Minister had to say on the matter of Hamas, which is a group in Palestine, which is called a terrorist group. And the Prime Minister had some words for the whole thing. Then we're going to look at an assessment by two speakers, and then we're going to get into a discussion about where Jamaica fits into all of this. I'm also going to draw on some inspiration from one of my favorite persons, Malcolm X, who had something to say on the matter as well, even though he was speaking way back in the 1960s. The issue of Palestine, the Middle East, Israel versus the Arabs, is a long-standing one for many years, some 1,500 years before Christ, and of course subsequently. So quite a bit of history to cover, but we're going to summarize it all and kind of see where we as a people should be on the matter, or could be on the matter, what my personal take is, and how we should contextualize the whole thing when we're thinking about which side to support, if any. Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie, Craig Mackenzie, Gaza, yes. Magalian, good to see you on as well. So let's take a look now on this particular commentary on the Prime Minister, then we're going to get into our discussion. So let's take a listen.
In a release issued on Saturday, October 7, Prime Minister Andrew Holness shared the administration's stance on the outbreak of violence in Israel, stating that, quote, "The government of Jamaica condemns in strongest terms the attack by the Hamas group on Israel, resulting in the deaths, injury, and abduction of Israeli civilians. We convey our sympathies to the government and people of Israel and to the families of all those affected. Jamaica firmly believes that the use of violence and terror has no place in international relations and should never be used against innocent civilians. We call for a cessation of hostilities, a return to peace within internationally agreed guidelines, and the pursuit of diplomatic solutions." End quote, Prime Minister Holness appears to be the only Caribbean leader to have so far issued a statement on the conflict. With a statement from CARICOM not forthcoming at this time, our newsroom will continue to track developments.
Boy, we're having some serious audio problems here. I hope you can hear me now. So I was saying, the Prime Minister has stepped into this subject matter, even though the rest of the Caribbean is silent on the matter, and CARICOM itself is silent on the matter. But the Prime Minister saw it fit to make an announcement, and on the surface, it's not a bad announcement if the facts could bear out what the Prime Minister was saying. I noticed he spoke about, no violence and stuff should be involved. And I totally agree with that kind of statement. But there's more to it. We're going to unpack it in a bit. But let's listen to another news report which speaks to how the Jamaican people have responded to this, at least from one news outlet perspective. Let's take a quick look at that. Let me see if I can bring that up for you in a second here. So here we go. So this report says that the Jamaican people bashes the Prime Minister for his support of Israel, which is quite interesting. So here's what this had to say.
Jamaicans have been sharing mixed feelings about the Prime Minister condemning wars in foreign countries. On Saturday, PM Andrew Holness made comments on X, formerly known as Twitter, condemning the Hamas group's attack on Israel. Hamas is a Palestinian group that was declared a terrorist group a few years ago. But Jamaicans aren't pleased with the PM's comments. They believe bias is being shown to Israel because of the recent attacks from Hamas. However, the war between Israel and Palestine dates back almost a century. Trisha Gay Kelly has the details.
Local critics say...
Yeah, so that's not quite true. The conflict doesn't date back a century. It dates to over 1,500 years, but we're going to learn some more about that later.
Prime Minister has no right to defend Israel, which has been attacking Palestine for years without condemnation. Political analyst Damian Gordon says condemning one country means defending the other, which can be a serious issue when both parties hold valid claims.
It gives the impression that some human rights abuses are tolerable, dependent on who the victims are and dependent on who the abusers are. Yes? And it tacitly subscribes to the notion that some lives are more valuable than others.
But political analyst Kevin O'Brien Chang explains a leader must be a representation of his country. He says Jamaica's biblical connection to Israel forces most people to agree with the Prime Minister's comments. Chang also believes...
No, he's saying that the Prime Minister should reflect the opinions of the Jamaican people. Which is true. Now, does that not also apply to the Prime Minister respecting the wishes of the Jamaican people when they said they don't want politicians to get 200% and 300% increases, and when they say they don't want to be forced to take an injection that they don't want? So we can't cherry pick. It's either the Prime Minister should reflect the position of the Jamaican people or reflect his own position, but we can't have it both ways. So Mr. Chan clearly is very biased in his assessment, but that's understandable. I mean, he's a part of the PSOJ oligarchy that, tends to play the game with the Jamaican people. So we're not going to stand for it. But in principle, I agree that the Prime Minister, the government, is supposed to reflect the position of the Jamaican people. That's a given.
He would have done the right thing in condemning Palestine.
A leader has his own views, but he's also supposed to reflect the views of his people. And I feel that in this case, he has reflected the views of the majority of Jamaicans. That is my educated guess. From a prime ministerial point of view, Israel is a democracy. They were attacked, and the majority of Jamaicans, I believe, would support what he has said.
Despite being entitled to their own opinions, Gordon recommends politicians and leaders do not choose sides in such sensitive cases.
A good starting point for leaders is to say, well, I don't want to issue or take a position that may come across as being offensive or insensitive to some of the parties involved. And within that context, I am more inclined to take a position that is neutral.
Citizens were also stirred by the Prime Minister's comments due to the level of crime and violence portrayed locally. They say his focus needs to be redirected to local matters. Trisha Gay Kelly, CVM News.
I must agree with the gentleman that was speaking earlier that the Prime Minister should really try to be very careful about how we step into these conflicts around the world, particularly if you don't have a good understanding of the history, and also to protect the interest of the Jamaican people. You know, sometimes the little saying that, you know, cockroach, you know, kind of thing. So we have to be careful about how we engage in these matters. But, you know, safe to say, while the Prime Minister responded to the sad and tragic actions of HAMAS by condemning them as a terrorist, I would suggest a more informed and historical approach to understanding who the real terrorists are. And if the Prime Minister knows who the real terrorists are, then, you know, he probably would want to be a little bit more cautious in making those statements. Here in Jamaica, we're being terrorized by criminals, elected and unelected, on a daily basis. We live in a constant state of violence in the form of those who choose to use force or fraud to get their way in our own country. This includes a system of governance that makes it easy for a few to hold the majority of us hostage while stealing our wealth and our well-being by stealth. They have withheld our birthright lands from us while forcing us to slave and pay unnecessary mortgages, unnecessary interest, and unnecessary taxes, our own lands and our homes. They force us to pay excessive taxes for roads, policing, education, healthcare, and social amenities while failing to deliver commensurate quality. They fail to provide an environment conducive to grassroots economic development and upward mobility, pushing an economy which has left many Jamaicans to find it untenable to live in this country. In fact, many Jamaicans have been pushed to become economic refugees in other countries, while those who remain are driven into all forms of corruption, destitution, and despair. This is terror to me, and this is driving up the rate of depression, mental health disorder, and crime all around us. I mean, many Jamaicans are afraid to come home, and those who are here want to leave and are afraid to engage normally in society. So the two coalition parties, in my opinion, really have no credibility or right after 8 years of failure to speak about terrorism when they're guilty of terrorizing Jamaican people on so many levels. We should never really forget that it's these two parties that facilitated the importation of illegal guns, supported guns, gave them cover, they helped to give rise to gangs, and they built garrison communities that spawned ghettos and so-called squatter communities. They even passed laws that helped them to enrich themselves and their financial backers at the expense of the unsuspecting masses. So, with all of that, we really should be careful about how we step out there and start to talk about terrorism. These two parties in particular. Let's take a look now at the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and see if we can make sense of it and identify who is the real terrorist behind it all. To get a real sense of what is happening, we have to step back a bit in history and go back to a biblical perspective. Somebody saying the audio is not clear. I hope it's, let me pull this closer to me. I hope you can hear me better now. Distorted audio. All right. I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry about that. I hope you can hear me now. Let me know if you can hear me clearly. But anyways, let's continue. I hope you can hear me clearly. So let's step back a bit and look at the history of the Palestinians and the Jews in the context of the Bible, the Christian Bible, and the Torah, and see if we can get some perspective on all of this before we get too far down the rabbit hole and not be able to, decipher where we should be. on this. So let's just step back in history. So according to the Bible and the Torah, God promised a nomadic tribe of Semites, later known as Israelites or Jews, the land of another set of people, the Canaanites. God, according to the Torah and the Christian Bible, promised them this land as a gift if they were to keep his 10 commandments. That's the story where all of this begins. Right? Now I'm saying this to you not as a one who is advocating any particular religious position, because when it comes down to politics, it's my firm belief, that of the UIC, that you need to separate religion from politics. And oftentimes, when the two are mixed, you have some seriously troubling outcome. So, according to the Bible and the Torah, which guides many people, which informs many people, which causes many behaviors, God promised this small tribe of Semites, later called Jews and Israelites, the land of another set of people, based on the fact that this set of people were pagans, and God wanted to give a particular group, a chosen group, an area, to live his commandments and to demonstrate to the rest of humanity how mankind was meant to live on earth. So the story goes. Now, after 400 years of bondage in Egypt, the Bible and the Torah tells us that God freed the Israelites, or the Jews, from Egypt and led them through the Red Sea to conquer and occupy Canaan, which is the promised land. The Persians came along and conquered Israel and dispersed the Jews. The Romans later on came on the scene and conquered the Persians and also harassed the Jews before naming the area that they occupied as Palestine after the original inhabitants of Palestine. Now, the Jewish people were now scattered around the world until World War I, when a segment of the Jewish population, or the Jewish diaspora, called themselves the Zionists and created the Zionist movement, which was focused on trying to regain Palestine as the Jewish homeland. That was happening in the context of the Jewish people being harassed on every front, from the Romans to the early Christian church, accusing them of killing Christ, the Romans, harassing them because they were different. They worship on the seventh day Sabbath. They only worship one God, and that other peculiar, behaviors that were different from the other people. So they were kind of unique. They stood out, and they were, persecuted for this. And so it was only natural that some of them in the diaspora want a homeland that is designated to their people, that they could live as Jews and not be scattered, or to not have a homeland for themselves. Incidentally, we Africans also have a problem with our homeland, where the Europeans came in and decimated it and carved it up and created an Africa that we don't like today. Now, the British saw this as an opportunity when they were fighting World War I. That was in the early 1900s. Oh, you still can't hear me? Okay, let me see if I can put this mic right in my mouth here. Let's see. Let me know if that is any better. Is that better? Can you hear me better now? Let me see if this works any better. I hope so. It's right up in my mouth now. So the British saw this as an opportunity to sow division and discord in the Middle East region in the hopes of furthering their own cause, and that of the oligarchs who control things behind the scene. Because all wars are fought really over power, money, and sometimes, of course, people and people are tricked into taking religious views and all that kind of stuff and fighting over that without knowing the real impetus of the war. So the idea of nationalism was identified as a remedy that the British could use in the Middle East to help them to win the war, the First World War. Okay, the Zionist movement was equated to a nationalist movement, and so the Zionist cause was taken up by the British, not because they care about the Zionists or because they care about Israel, but because they saw it as an opportunity to continue the divide and conquer strategy. So they used this to divide and conquer the Arab region to help them win the war and to end up controlling the oil wealth and to dominate the world as a result. It worked out beautifully. The end result was that Britain, Europe, the oligarchs behind the scenes, they now have a strong foothold in the Middle East. They created the divisions that they wanted, and they were now really the conquerors, to the point where Britain would now have the ability to kind of decide who they want to give Palestine to. Yeah? And somebody's saying it's breaking up again. Boy, I don't know what to do here. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's breaking up, but I'm trying here. So yeah, so now the next step in this whole episode is what happens subsequently. The powers that be used movies to create propaganda. For example, you might see in a movie where somebody's a bully, they get another person in trouble, and then they back off, and the principal comes and sees the person who wasn't the aggressor and assume he's the aggressor or she, and they get punished for it. You'll see in movies, for example, where we're told, you see cowboys and Indians, and the result is the cowboys are good and the Indians are bad. Even though we all know, if we think about it, if we were to divorce ourselves from the reality they're trying to plant in our minds, we'd be able to say, no, man. But these Europeans that try to take away the land and stuff from these Indians, so the Indians are right and the cowboys are bad. But they use the movie to get us to see the Indians as bad and the cowboys as good. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. So it's a trick that has worked very, 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 very well. And it continued into the Middle East now, where they've gotten us to look at the Arabs, the Palestinians and others as the terrorists. America and Britain and others, led by what I call the oligarchs behind the scenes, have been able to carve up these territories, create divisions in these spaces, and then when the people retaliate, for example in Jamaica, when the slaves would retaliate, they call them rebels. Yeah, rebel is a bad word, it's a bad name, but they call them rebels. But they're not rebels. They're revolting because you have done something bad to them. And so in the Middle East, a lot has been done to the people in the Middle East, taking away their oil, taking away their autonomy, their sovereignty, assassinating their leaders, setting up dictators, taking down dictators, doing all kinds of stuff that creates, animosity towards the West. And Israel, for want of a better word, is a representation of the West in that region. And so you're going to have this kind of animosity towards them. And as long as they are there will be a problem. And I'll tell you more about it in a bit. So one of the key strategies of the oligarchs and those who run the world behind the scenes, they try to get us to hate those people who are being oppressed and to love those people who are doing the oppressing. And that is one of the big problems that we have to overcome in our minds when we're assessing any particular situation. Yeah. Somebody's asking if I have a fan or another device close by. No, I don't. So I'm not sure why we're having that problem. But let's try this. Maybe this is better. I hope this is better. I think I had it turned the wrong way a bit, but we'll try to continue to improve it as we go along. Now, England has a philosophy. I want to say England, really think about the West, America and others who kind of form this group of thinking that believe that conquest is the way to go. They have a philosophy of violence. Even when they're pretending not to use violence, it's violence. They use force, they use fraud in order to get their way, instead of trading value for value. So that's the kind of mindset and mentality which has driven the engagement of these countries with the rest of the world. Yeah, they have used violence, force, and fraud as the core method of getting anything done, even when they're pretending. Like when they send a priest to your shores, it is still a form of violence. They will attack your culture. They will attack your being, the way your religion, your customs. They'll find a way to violently attack and destroy what you hold there. They focus on conquest, on manipulation, plunder, instead of mutually beneficial trade. They use coercion, deception, and aggression instead of peaceful exchange, where both sides would voluntarily agree to trade in desired goods and services. So World War I and World War II were expressions of that violence. And in World War I, they used the Jews just as much as they used the Arabs to help them fight their war at various levels. So whether it's a war against a fellow European country that they need to fight against, or a desire to subsequently capture the wealth of a particular region, they use war to accomplish that. War solves many problems for them, many economic problems. If they want to take over your resources, if they want to sell arms and ammunition, if they want to get their people into position or their companies into a country, they use war, the threat of war. They send people inside to assassinate, to undermine governments, and so on. So they're always very violent in their approach. So in 1948, the Jews were granted statehood in Palestine by the British, because they had promised that to the Zionist group. And at the same time, they had to try to placate the Arab groups, because they've also made promises to them, and they've made promises to other European countries like Russia and France that are going to carve up, the Middle East and give them. So they made a lot of promises that were very difficult to fulfill after the war. But of course, the main objective was met, which was winning the war and gaining access to the spoils of war. Now, if you think about it, Britain had no claim on the lands of Palestine. So how could they be giving the lands of Palestine or a piece of it to anybody, whether it is the Zionist movement or any other organization or any other nation or group? They had no claim to that. So these lands that they had were swindled, and they tricked the Arabs and the Jews into helping them to do what they're doing, and thus created a great divide. And while they were doing this, they were creating all forms of distraction, and in essence, they were deceiving all of the different parties that they were dealing with, be it the Arabs or the Jews. They were engaged in massive deception, massive trickery. Somebody's saying it's because I'm moving my hands, so now I have to stop moving my hands. Boy, this is not good. But anyways, so the same strategy and tactics have been used in other countries like India. You might recall, when the British went to India, it was a united country. When they left, it was divided. And by united, I'm not talking about a utopia. I'm just saying it did not have India and Pakistan. It did not have the kind of wars that developed and the division that developed after the British left. And they do that with every country. Wherever they go, they never leave that country intact. They always seek to plant some form of division in them. When they're in charge, well, they want unity. But when they leave, they sow division and then show discord in the hopes of creating an environment where they can continue to exploit the citizens, exploit the population for their ends. Believe it or not, that's also the purpose of partisan politics. Partisan politics is a tool of these people. Yeah. That is a tool that they use to create division. We have all become used to it because that's what we grow up on, so we think that is the way politics is supposed to be. But it's not. They have planted, like they do with the movies and the books and the teachings and the schooling and the curriculums, they plant these things in our minds and get us to accept them as normal. Now, of course, today we're getting a bit of awakening, more awakening. There are others who had awakening before now, but we're now getting more awakening because we have more access to information and we can now question what we've been taught. But the impact is still real, So partisan politics is a key byproduct, a key tool, rather, and tactic and strategy of the British and the West. In fact, in almost any environment where you have power plays and people trying to get the upper hand, they like to create division. It's a divide and conquer tactic that works beautifully in every country to ensure subversion of unity, subversion of liberty, and subversion of justice. They use that to undermine. Now, the American war on terror, which came later on, is but an extension of the global oligarchs, British trickery, and colonialism in general. So America came on the scene as the superpower that took over from Britain, but of course is very closely allied with Britain. They share the same value system. And when I say this, I don't mean the country per se. I mean those behind the scenes who run these countries. They don't get elected. They don't run for office per se. Just like in Jamaica, the oligarchs don't run for office per se. They're in the background. They're the puppet masters controlling the politicians, controlling the political process. So America, for example, used the petrodollar, which is basically, getting the Arab countries and the oil-producing ones in particular to agree to sell their oil only in the US dollar, which creates a massive opportunity for the US, on the threat, of course, of the security of those Arab countries, right? 9/11 was another tragedy, which is a direct result of this game that the West and America have been playing, which then comes back home to the American soil and cost the American people, along with many other, acts of terror which have occurred. You see that one of the biggest outcome of this is in Iraq, where on false pretense and pretext, they went in and killed thousands upon thousands of Iraqis and thousands of American men and women in uniform. On false information of weapons of mass destruction. Again, an outcome of this divide and conquer strategy. The goal was to gain access to the wealth and resources of these people at the expense of the lives of anyone, be it American lives, British lives, Arab lives, Jewish lives. They don't care. They're willing to do anything to get to the end. But they cloak it in all kind of propaganda to get us to accept and believe in what they're doing. I'm so sorry that there's a lot of static in this thing. I'm not sure why that's happening. Let me try it this way and see if that will help any at all. I'm not sure why this microphone isn't doing justice to us tonight. Let me know if this is any better. Okay. All right. So yeah. So let's continue on this. So Malcolm X gave a really, really beautiful response. And he's the one who actually made it so clear that they got us to hate the oppressed and to love the oppressor. I want to play for you now what he had to say, which is really powerful. It's not meant to be, in my opinion, a all-inclusive assessment of the situation. But I think he wanted to appeal to our understanding that there's more to this than meets the naked eye, and you should not allow your preconceived ideas, maybe even false education, maybe a romantic religious education, to cause you to side with the wrong group. Maybe we shouldn't even side with anybody. What we really need to do is to understand the problem and therefore appeal to a real solid solution that respects the rights of all that are involved. So let me see if I can get Mr. X on screen with us now to hear what he has to say. So let's take a look here. I'll try to get Malcolm on the screen. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see here if we can do this. Wow. Why is the audio so bad? I really don't have a clue. I mean, this is a very new mic that I got just for to make sure that we could get good audio on this. I'm not sure what is going on here, why we always have some of these problems. Okay, let's try this.
Palestinian struggle is not just a cry for justice. It's a blistering battle for the most fundamental human rights that every living soul on this planet should inherit by birthright. It's an unyielding resistance against the oppressive, suffocating grip of occupation and the callous denial of the most basic human dignity. Just as the civil rights movement in the United States fought against the chains of racial discrimination, so too do the Palestinian people strive to shatter the chains of occupation and tyranny. Never forget, my friends, that the Palestinians, much like African Americans in the United States, have been subjected to a heart-wrenching history of suffering and torment. The birth of Israel in 1948 brought forth the mass expulsion and dispossession of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their ancestral homes and land. This is a historic injustice that continues to haunt the lives of Palestinians to this very day. The situation in Palestine serves as a brutal reminder of the consequences of colonialism and the ruthless dispossession of indigenous people. It is an agonizing reminder that the fight for justice knows no borders, and we must stand united in solidarity with all oppressed peoples, whether they reside in the United States, South Africa, or anywhere around the world. Let's be unequivocally clear. Advocating for the rights of the Palestinian people is not synonymous with denying the rights and security of the Jewish people. The fight for justice in Palestine is not an assault on any particular group, but an unwavering stand against the policies of a Zionist state that has for far too long stripped Palestinians of their rights. We must remember that numerous Jewish voices also resound in the calls for justice and peace in Palestine, and their voices must not be silenced. In our relentless pursuit of justice for the Palestinian people, we must also acknowledge that it is in the best interest of the entire world to seek a just and enduring solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is a pursuit in the name of peace, stability, and the dignity of all mankind. But let me underscore this. The battle for justice in Palestine is not merely a political struggle, it's an elemental moral battle. It's the fight for the most basic human rights of a people who have suffered these injustices for far too long. It's the fight for the right to exist in peace and security, free from the ceaseless specter of violence and dispossession. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. I implore every person of conscience, regardless of their origins or beliefs, to stand steadfast with the Palestinian people in their unwavering quest for justice by any means necessary. Let us unite in building a world where every soul can live in freedom and dignity. where the rights of every individual are not just respected, but celebrated. The struggle for justice in Palestine is a universal fight, a resonating echo of the battles waged by oppressed people across the globe. It's a battle we must champion, a torch we must carry, and a legacy we must honor. Thank you, and free Palestine.
Can you hear me? Let me check it myself here. Mic check, mic check. Can you hear me? Oh, no sound now, eh? Okay, so that's a problem there. Okay, so test. Can you hear me? Mic is off. Okay. Still nothing. Okay, testing. Looks like we're good now. All right, looks like we're back. Let me know if you can hear me now. Ann Gore says I can hear. Okay, good. All right, just anyone, just let me know if you can hear me. If you can hear me now. I just refreshed everything and see if that will work. Great. All right, good. All right, so I hope you heard the speech from Malcolm X. So what they've done to us, folks, they have divided us into Jews versus Arabs, Indians versus Pakistanis, tribes versus tribes in Africa, tribes versus tribes in Europe, race versus race in America, gender versus gender, rich versus poor, party versus party. Always just manipulations by the oligarchs, whether they're global oligarchs or local oligarchs in Jamaica or any other country. The bottom line is just to divide us by any means necessary. Any way at all they can get to do that, they will do that. Yeah. And once they divide us, we become distracted from what is really happening. They get us to fight each other. They use this whatever it is, whether it's our race or status or gender or tribe or religion, whatever it is, they use that to divide us. They then use the media to distract us, and then use multiplicity of deceptions to extract our wealth from us. They get to enslave us, they get to rob us of our time, of our labor, and our property rights. It's not only the Palestinians that lands were stolen from. We, the Jamaican people, our lands have been stolen, and most of us have accepted it because we don't even realize that our lands were stolen from us. We just take it as okay. We think it's okay for us to get up and work hard and try to make money to buy land in order to build a house, because we're told that is normal, but it's not normal. The land already belonged to us. They tricked us. It's all a part of their scheme to enslave the world by any means necessary, and that is why when Malcolm X says we need to fight back by any means necessary, he's correct. Of course, when you do fight back by any means necessary, they're going to call you a terrorist. So when they come into your country and they bomb your country and call your wives and children collateral damage in the process, when they come into your country and they poison your leader, or they infiltrate your government ministries, or they undermine your agriculture with GMO and artificial fertilizer and kill your indigenous agriculture, when they infiltrate your school system and mess up the minds of your people and your children, when they cause starvation and death, when they cause famine and all kinds of destruction, and then you respond, you become a terrorist. Now, you have to remember, when they extract your wealth, they become very powerful, very, very powerful. And so when they're now fighting with you, oh my goodness, it was clear a minute ago. But anyways, when they now come to fight with you, and they come with tanks and big guns and massive artillery, massive war machines, and you're facing them, what do you face them with? You are not now in a position of strength. You don't have the big guns like they do. You don't have the big tanks. You don't have the nuclear weapon. You don't have the artilleries that they have. So what do? You fight them by the means that you can. So you end up fighting them by guerrilla tactics. You end up fighting them with suicide bombers. Now, I'm not advocating for any of this. What I'm saying is, when you push a people, when you push a group, when you take away the rights of people and you force them into a corner, they're going to respond. That's so right, Angor. They used to call Nelson Mandela a terrorist. Yes. So who is the real terrorist? Who is the real terrorist here? Is it the oppressed who they have been able to find various ways to undermine their economy, undermine their nationhood, undermine their sovereignty, ripped out their resources, planted division among them, caused them to see differences where they saw none. If you went to Palestine prior to the Balfour Declaration, where Britain decided that they're going to give away Palestine to a particular group, you would have found Jews and Arabs living peacefully, coexisting with each other. Yes, you always have some form of violence in any society, right? But barring those minor, violence or minor, the people were living together. Christians and Jews and Arabs have always lived in Palestine. But when the powers that be orchestrated the events that triggered the kind of problem we now have, that's why we're here today. So when the Prime Minister singles out one of the groups or one of the conflicting party and say, you are a terrorist, he's either very ignorant or very deliberate or just being a puppet as usual. The UIC prefers to take a more informed position on these matters. So when we ask the question, who is the real terrorist? That's where we're coming from. The real terrorists are those who do the manipulating behind the scenes and those who allow themselves to be used by them. So in Jamaica's context, we could very well point to the two colonial parties as terrorist organizations who have aided and abetted the colonial powers and the special interest group to undermine and rob the Jamaican people and push us into a state where now crime and violence, depression is at the stage that it is. So let's take the words of Malcolm X to heart. Don't hate those who retaliate by any means necessary in an attempt to fight back. In fact, we need to help them. And all of us to understand the true enemy. And we need to join hands here in Jamaica and around the world to fight back intelligently. Don't listen to any leader who has no principles and will sell us out to the highest bidder without looking at the facts. An unprincipled leader, a leader who stands for nothing but power and money, is not a leader you can trust to lead you anywhere but into destruction. And that's what we're seeing right here in Jamaica, a leadership which is taking us down the wrong road. We had a leader before who made the mistake of taking sides in the Cold War. It's a leader that is very beloved by many Jamaicans. But I think he was wrong. He should never have done that. He should have taken a page out of Lee Kuan Yew's book and instead choose to be a smart, wise, pragmatic leader that focuses on building a strong, solid country at home before you get too vociferous about what's happening around the world, before you take any sides around the world. I loved and respected the diplomacy of Lee Kuan Yew because all of his utterances, all of his statements were designed entirely to protect the interest of the Singaporean people. We need leaders in Jamaica who are going to protect the interest of the Jamaican people at all cost. We don't need leaders who will just do what they need to do to get benefits from their colonial masters or from the local oligarch puppet masters. We need leaders who are going to protect the interest of Jamaica, and sometimes that interest is best served by keeping your mouth closed. Sometimes that interest is best served by ensuring you understand the history and can take a statesman position in responding to whatever is happening globally. A better position for the Prime Minister would have been one where he sought to use the opportunity to educate Jamaicans and the world about what is really going on in the Middle East, the genesis of it. You can have a well-written speech, because I don't have the luxury of what the Prime Minister have. I don't have a big staff. I don't have your tax dollars to do all the stuff that needs to be done. So I just do my best. But if I were Prime Minister with all the resources of the states at my disposal, I would ensure that we had a well-written speech, that when that speech is given and it goes around the world, everybody would say, wow, now that's a leader and that's a wise country. Because that speech would serve to not attack Israel or Hamas, not attack even the colonial masters, but to put the whole situation in context so that those of us who don't know or don't remember or don't understand the more than 1,500 years of history behind this, and the history from the First World War and the Second World War, and the outgrowth of it and how it has impacted world history, global oil prices, economic turmoil, inflation. This would have been a great moment, without spending a whole lot of money, for Jamaica to demonstrate its leadership on the world stage as one who will contextualize the problem for the world and encourage understanding on all sides, and even find itself as a mediator because of its unbiased position and its ability to articulate rather than simply echo the verbiage of one side or the other, or be a puppet for one side or the other. We in our state cannot afford to be such a puppet. We don't need to get into a fight with America or England or anyone, but we also don't need to be manipulated by them either. And that's why I have great respect for Lee Kuan Yew and the way that he has governed Singapore and brought them to where they are. So this is why the UIC is the way to go. The UIC is focused on uniting, liberating, and empowering the people with truth, with knowledge, with wisdom, with understanding. The understanding that the nation needs to fight back at the ballot box where possible. That's the first place we have to start. If you're in an economy, if you're in a country where you can pursue the ballot box remedy, use it as the first option. We have joined hands by combining our time, our talents, and our treasure, our resources. That's what we're doing. Jamaicans here at home and abroad. We're combining our time, our talents, and our treasure to stop the PSOJ oligarchs and the colonial masters from continuing to control our political process, from continuing to use subtle terrorism against the people of Jamaica. The UIC provides a systemic solution instead of becoming a prostitute to the oligarchs' partisan system of campaign gimmicks over the last 8 years. The UIC understands that when they stole our birthright by stealing the land from our ancestors, by stealing the liberty from our ancestors, from stealing the property rights of our ancestors, the UIC understands that they were condemning all of us to a life of unnecessary pain, privation, or poverty. The UIC understands that they have robbed us, you and me, of our economy and made it almost impossible for the ordinary Jamaican to ever be financially free. They have imprisoned our people in a jail cell called wage slavery. So when you join, volunteer, or donate to elect the UIC, what you're really doing is taking the steps necessary to take back your life, take back your liberty, and take back your property from the colonial masters and from their two colonial parties and from the PSOJ oligarchs who confiscated them over the course of history. When you understand what we have been teaching you, and that's why the UIC is called the Education Party. We're not here for the gimmicks and the dog and pony show. When you understand what we have been teaching you, you will get excited about joining, about volunteering and donating to ensure Jamaica votes UIC to take back your life, to take back your liberty, and to take back your property from the two colonial parties that have helped the same colonial masters who have destroyed the Middle East and their puppet PSOJ oligarchs here in Jamaica, who are all working in concert to steal from you, your children, and your family. That's when people don't get excited about joining, volunteering, and donating. Many persons are not excited yet because they don't understand what we're trying to teach them. They think they can wait around for one day for a Messiah to come, for the right leader of the two colonial parties to come, for the hearts of our politicians to change and do the right thing. It will never happen. And when they understand that, they will know that the time has come for them to rise up and own their own movement. To join, support, or vote for either of those two colonial parties is the same as voting against your own life, your own liberty, and your property. A vote for them increases crime. A vote for them puts us in chains of all kinds of bondage, from inflation to overtaxation to excessive and debilitating regulations. And they continue to hold on to your property, to your land that is yours by birthright. They continue to hold it, and they're forcing you to work, to slave day and night to buy a piece of it, to own a home. Look how easily Singapore, smaller than us, 1/15 our size, with more than twice our population, look how easily they made 93% of their people homeowners. And we have not been able to do it after 80 years of these two parties. I wonder if you see the trick. The UIC, which is the People's Party, is 100% funded, owned, and controlled by you. While those two parties are funded and owned and controlled by the PSOJ oligarchs and the colonial masters. The UIC is of the people, by the people, and for the people, and the sooner we get that in our heads is the faster we shall grow, the more funding we shall have, the more members we shall have, the more candidates we shall have. We are our own enemy until we find out that we are our own solution. Don't let them buy, trick, and deceive the ignorant and licky among us to win all the seats in the next election. If we do the right thing, we can win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 seats. So the time has come for us to rise up Jamaica. The time has come for us to stop allowing them to control us, stop allowing them to divide us, stop allowing them to distract us with their political gimmicks, stop allowing them to deceive us. They have done it over and over. The truth is we have no excuse now because we have now seen the UIC has made it so clear. It's 8 years now of it. And so the time has come for us to break free. So our friends in Palestine on either sides, Jews or Arabs, they should know that we stand in solidarity with all who wants truth, liberty, and justice. I'm sure there are Jews who want an honest resolution to this problem. There are Palestinians who want an honest resolution to this problem. And there are Jews and Palestinians who, like here in Jamaica, would take advantage of the division to achieve their own nefarious ends. There are some people on either side who don't want the war to stop because they want to continue with gaining whatever they can gain from it. You know, some people, they get political mileage every time there's a bombing on one side or the other. Yes, we have more. Let's go. Let's push for this. We know the politics. So we as a people and our leaders must be careful how we engage. Let's stay focused on fixing Jamaica first. Dance a yard before you dance abroad. It's a pity we did not get to see what Marcus Garvey would have done if he was allowed, as the man who created the first political party, if he was allowed to do what he wanted to do, it would have been wonderful to see. But he was stopped by these two parties. We have seen what they have done with the 80 years that they have gotten from 1944 to now, almost 80 years. And I count it as 80 because they started before 1944. We have seen what they have done. And at the same time, we have seen what another country that was a colony of England has done. I will not stop referring to Singapore. Why? Because it is so small they should not have succeeded. Why? Because it was so messed up, more messed up than Jamaica, that they should not have succeeded. And so when people say to us, you can't compare yourself with America, you can't compare yourself with England, when we talk about good roads or good public transportation or good security or good education or good healthcare, they say you can't compare. Those are big, rich countries. True. So fine. So let's compare with a country that was smaller than we, 1/15th our size, don't have 1% of our resources, marred by serious internal conflicts, racial conflicts, religious conflicts, linguistic conflicts. And yet still, even though they got independence around the same time as we and had the same level of economic output as we at independence, $550 per capita per person, they have significantly flown away from us. Within 25 years, they moved from a third world country to a first world country. And after 80 years, we still can't do that. That tells you something. So don't be fooled by them. No matter who they bring as leader, don't be fooled by it. No matter what new promises they make you this time around, don't be fooled by it because they have made all those promises already. And do not forget that there is no greater terrorist organization in this country than those two parties. There is no gang in Jamaica that is more of a gang than those two parties. There is no single entity in Jamaica that has stolen more from the Jamaican people than those two parties. They have stolen so much from you, it is unimaginable. There are many of you today that are suffering and struggling in another man's country, in the cold, suffering all kind of racial prejudice and so on. And you do that because you had to left your country. You know you could not have achieved your full potential in your country. It was too hard, too difficult. I was talking to my wife, and as a sharing understand the gravity of Jamaica's problem. She feel it, but we wanted to put it in words. And so I said to her, the condition in Jamaica is this. The reason why a young person decides to join one or the other of those two political parties, as bright as they may be, as bright as they are. I think of young Andre Orton, who so clearly enunciated all that is wrong with the political process and how evil it is. But then he went back in. And she wanted to understand why. Why would these people do that? Why would a bright person like that go back in? And I said to her, it's simple. In Jamaica, there is no way for the average person to do well in this country unless they are engaged in corruption or some form of crime. No way. And they look around and they see that if they're going to achieve a certain standard of living, they cannot hope to go to school, get an education, get a job, learn on the job, start their business, and grow their business successfully just here, just right at home. They cannot hope to do that because the system is so restrictive and punitive that they feel they must either leave Jamaica or get involved in some form of corrupt or criminal activity in order to achieve some level of quality living. I don't know how you can live quality if you're involved in that, but they see it. To drive the car, to afford the mortgage, the house, to get the blight, to get the access. They don't see how they can do that unless they get involved. And that is why you see some of our bright young people deciding to join those two parties, because they realize that is the avenue to getting wealth. If they don't join it, one way or the other, they may not join it as a candidate. They may join it as a foot soldier at various levels, somewhere in the system where they end up getting the contracts. Okay? Other than that, they have no hope. Because if you don't join one or the other, you won't get access to certain benefits. And that is why after you make your choice to join one or the other, you will steal, you will kill, you will engage in almost any form of corruption to make sure your party win, because you know that's your ticket to wealth in this country. Other than that, you better leave. And that is why some don't go the political route. They go drugs. So they seek to smuggle drugs. And some get into other forms of criminality, be it scamming or something. But they know they cannot get to where they want to go normally. When I left Jamaica as a young man and come to Canada, I quickly realized how much I can achieve just about anything in that beautiful country without ever having to go to a politician or a political party or to get involved in politics or to do anything. None of that was necessary. I could just focus on building my competences, become a great accountant, and I can rise. I can be a financial analyst and a business analyst. I can be an account manager, a financial controller, a CFO, president, whatever it is. I can achieve these things I can achieve these things by my own merit in a country like Canada or Singapore. But in Jamaica, you can't achieve your full potential unless you dirty your hand in the political process or corruption or crime. And that is why crime is rising in the country. That is why it's becoming less and less stable for you to live in and enjoy a decent life. You might have money. You might be able to, come back to Jamaica with your assets, or you might have some pension, that allow you to live a decent life or whatever. But when you come, you have to live now with this constant threat and fear. You can't just live your life. You have to be worried every minute about somebody stealing from you, holding you up, killing you for what you have worked for. Because 80 years of those two colonial parties brought us here. 80 years of those two parties brought us to where we are. They had full control of our education system. So if you think about the mindset of the people, the mentality of the people is them created. They have full control of our economy. So if you think about the lack of jobs and lack of opportunities for our young people and our young professionals to have upward mobility, is them created. If you think about the lack of infrastructure and the lack of decent community development across the country, is them responsible for it. They have had full control. So when they come to you and tell you they have this program and this idea and this thing that they're going to do, don't buy any of it. Because if they couldn't do it in 80 years, they will never do it. They will simply advise you. They will simply seek to trick you into saying, vote for us again and we will do better. Just like now you have the opposition telling you, vote for us now and we're going to do better. Why you never do better when you were in before? Why didn't you fix the police when you were in? Why didn't you fix healthcare when you were in? Why didn't you fix the economy? Why you need it now? Vote for me now and I will fix it now. And the one that's in government now going to tell you, give us another term and we will finish the job. Finish what job? What have you done with the 7 years that you have had in office? What have you done with the years you had in office before now? You stole our money that was supposed to be for education. You stole our money that was supposed to be for road works and development. And now we have to be selling off our roads, selling off our highways to others to run them. Our airport is gone, our train system is gone, our bus, public transportation, everything is gone. Sugar is gone, banana is gone, coffee is gone. And all you do is regulate us and make our lives harder, but we can't see the result. We can't see what your legislations are doing. We can't see what your economic management is. You're telling us we have growth. Growth for who? For a few. Carol Spence, I wish everything remained the same. It hasn't. Jamaica is getting worse and worse. We are now so far behind economically as individuals. Yes, you have a few companies that are still extracting whatever little milk they can get out of us. But the vast majority of Jamaicans are now out of touch with the economic reality of the world. They're not prepared for the AI reality. They're not prepared to be able to offer products and services to a new economy. We're not able to export. We're now importing more and more. When oil prices go back to 100 to 150 a barrel, what do you think is going to happen to us? When we stop getting the freebies that we were getting from other countries who give us something to take something else, what will happen to us? You cannot succeed at failing 70% of your students every year in your school system. You can't succeed like that. And we have been doing this consistently year over year. You cannot succeed with the level of your productivity dropping every year. You cannot succeed when now more and more there are blockouts. Almost, if you look now, almost every parish, every community is having rolling blackouts. Why we're having rolling blackouts? Because we are failing. We cannot produce the energy necessary to drive the country. And if you don't have energy, affordable energy at that, you cannot grow an economy. If your police are not happy and comfortable, they're going to become corrupt and you can't manage crime. If your healthcare system is inappropriate for the needs of the people, you're going to have an unhealthy nation that cannot produce. So this is what we have in Jamaica right now. And so, in summary, our friends in Palestine, Israel, even America, the UK, all of us need to become aware of the truth and make sure we're fighting the real enemy. Right here in Jamaica, the real enemy is the system of governance that is designed to divide, distract, and deceive us so a few can steal from us. We must get rid of that system. We must end the system whereby a few wealthy people are able to control our politicians, our political parties, and our government. We must embrace the UIC solution of a non-partisan constitutional republic that is 100% publicly funded campaign financing, that provides separation of power between the Senate, the House, and the executive branch, as well as the judiciary, that will allow us to maximize our resources in an accountable and responsible and sustainable way by employing subject matter experts in all of our ministries instead of appointing politicians. We must have an elected Senate where senators are elected to represent the people of their parishes as opposed to being appointed to be rubber stamps for the leaders of their parties. The UIC has the answer for Jamaica, but the Jamaican people can't hear it because the oligarchs control the media and they control the money. But we, the people, can overcome them if we decide that we are going to fund our own party. And that's what the UIC is about. I know it's a long stretch. When we designed the UIC, we knew it was not going to be easy because we're fighting against the same powers that are destroying the people in Palestine. They're working through our own local agents here. But we know that if we can convince you to understand the problem, you will rise up, join, volunteer, and donate to help the UIC, to help you and me to have a better Jamaica. Thank you so much for your time. See you next time on our next topic, which is the Maroon Agenda, coming up on the 13th. Have a good night. All the best. Please give us a score, 100% if we're good, and something else if we're not. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I have to run now. We'll catch up again later. All the best.